Water utility staff continuously monitor water quality by sampling and analyzing drinking water throughout the distribution system. Water suppliers regularly test for many contaminants, whether chemical, biological, or physical. Microbiological contamination is monitored by routinely testing for coliform bacteria, an indicator of contamination. Good monitoring data depends on getting good representative water samples. Representative, reliable sampling and well-managed monitoring are essential to providing safe drinking water. No water system is perfect. Treated water even is not sterile, but pathogens, disease-causing organisms, should be absent. Total coliform bacteria are commonly found in untreated water. Thus, this class of bacteria is a good indicator of the effectiveness of treatment, and their presence may indicate a possible contamination of the water supply. When a water utility detects total coliform bacteria in a sample, their presence may or may not be an indication of a serious water contamination problem. Nonetheless, every total coliform positive sample must be checked just in case. When total coliform bacteria are detected, the system is then checked for Escherichia coli or E. coli, normally associated with fecal contamination, since these bacteria can be a sign that the system could also be compromised by disease-causing organisms. This is why when sampling finds a positive total coliform, it is tested for E. coli, a bacterium that should not be found in the finished water of the distribution system. Contamination in the distribution system can occur through a cross-connection, an unprotected storage tank, a water main break, or the installation of a new main. The Safe Drinking Water Act, originally passed by Congress in 1974 to protect public health by regulating the nation's public drinking water supply, includes regulations mandating coliform bacteriological sampling. The Total Coliform Rule, or the TCR, requires all public water systems to collect samples and have them analyzed and reported monthly. The TCR's objective is to monitor treatment effectiveness, distribution system integrity, and to detect fecal contamination should it occur. The ability to test for every individual bacterial, viral, and protozoan pathogens is still not practical. Instead, water is examined for indicator organisms. So the coliform group of bacteria is used as an indicator of a water system's integrity. Coliform bacteria are easily detected in water and may indicate the presence of contamination. Representative sampling of the distribution system helps alert water providers to potential problems and represents an integral part of the effort to protect the public health. The minimum number of samples required is specified in the Total Coliform Rule and varies based on population served by the water system. However, some states require more stringent sampling test frequency. So every water provider should consult its state to determine the number of samples required and the frequency of sample collection for each community. The TCR also requires every public water system to develop a written sampling plan that is subject to state approval. The plan includes the minimum number of samples required, how often the samples must be collected, and a detailed description of where sampling will occur. Getting a good representative sample for total coliform testing is critical, as is selecting a good sample location. The primary considerations for the sampling sites include representation of the different water sources entering the system and representation of conditions throughout the distribution system. Conditions affecting the microbiological quality of the water must be taken into consideration. For example, the location of water storage facilities, varying population densities, pressure zones, dead-end or low-flow mains and grids, and areas of historical water quality problems. Systems may use different sampling locations when they collect samples, or they may use fixed sample locations. Sampling sites may include public or municipal buildings such as libraries, fire stations, and schools, or may be located in the homes of customers. The faucets should be carefully selected to provide samples that are representative of the water in the local main and not of the customer's plumbing system. Sampling faucets should not be located near the ground and, if possible, should be inside a residence or building to avoid environmental contamination. Faucets utilizing separate controls for the hot and cold water should be chosen, with only the cold water tap used for sampling. Faucets that use a single lever controller for both the hot and cold water should not be used. Do not sample from homes or businesses where the water has undergone additional treatment like a water softener, carbon filter, or any point-of-use treatment device. Avoid faucets located in industrial, janitorial, or cleaning supply storage areas where the risk of accidental contamination is high. Such contamination can occur on the faucet or during sample collection. Here's an example to illustrate how faucet contamination can affect sampling results. A few years ago, the City of San Diego Water Department had an incident of total coliform positive tests, not alarming, but still unusual compared to past experiences and thousands of tests a year. The problem was traced back to samples taken in schools, libraries, and community centers where the water was being collected from drinking water fountains, kitchens, and bathrooms. The problem was multifold. Poor pressure in the drinking water fountains meant the sample collected represented water that had been fairly stagnant in the pipes. Also, kids had been placing their mouths directly on the faucet. The sinks in the bathrooms and kitchens were suspected of being prone to environmental contamination, such as from water splashing. There was nothing wrong with the drinking water. The samples were simply showing the presence of bacteria at the tap, when in fact the water coming from the distribution system was free of coliform bacteria. Contamination that comes from unsanitary or unrepresentative sampling taps results in costly and time-consuming repeat sampling. Even worse contamination events must be reported to the state agencies and to the public, which undermines confidence in their water supplier. San Diego overhauled its sampling program, installing permanent sampling stations, and went from 5 positives per week to 0 per week at those locations. Other water utilities, like Philadelphia, have addressed this same issue and have installed dedicated sampling stations and have experienced improved data quality. They provide an opportunity for quality control and can save time and money for the utility since the sampling location is fixed and under the control of the water provider. So, always check the sampling site and inspect the test faucet tap. Avoid using faucets with interior threads, strainers, hoses, point-of-use purification devices, or anything that causes mixing or churning of the water as it flows from the tap. Remove any aerator on a tap before sampling. Taps with aerators should be avoided when possible. Some water suppliers, like San Diego and Philadelphia, have installed permanent sample taps. They provide an opportunity for quality control and can save time and money for the utility since the sampling location is fixed and under the control of the water provider. It is important to remember that to get a good sample for testing is using proper sampling techniques. This ensures that you have not accidentally contaminated the sample yourself. Improper sampling techniques are often the most common problem in sampling. Mistakes made during sampling may result in poor data quality for monitoring. The key is correct sampling in the field, which begins with preparation and execution. Begin by assembling all of the sampling supplies needed. These include sterile sample bottles, extra bottles in case one gets dirty, gloves with to take samples without contaminating the sample, and clean coolers to store the samples in with ice or cold packs. The laboratory that will eventually test the samples usually provides the container or recommends one. Pre-sterilized glass containers may be used but may break during shipping. Plastic tends to be a more popular choice. A dechlorination chemical agent is needed if sampling waters contain residual chlorine, which is present in the distribution system. This chemical is already in the pre-sterilized sample bottles, so don't wash out the bottle used for total coliform sampling. After arriving at the sampling site, check the tap to make sure that it is in good working condition. It should be clean, free of attachments, and in good repair or without leaks. Remember to remove any aerator and to make sure the hot water is turned off. Some water utilities use alcohol or a chlorine solution or wipes to clean faucets before or between uses. These methods are not always necessary if the sampling site and tap are properly selected and maintained. Paying close attention to details is the key to good sampling technique. Keep records of any unusual observations at time of sampling. Begin sampling by opening the cold water tap and letting the water run for 2 minutes or until the water temperature stabilizes to clear the service line. This time can be used to fill out the label or tag. Always use waterproof ink. The sample forms can also be filled out immediately following the collection of the sample, but should be completed as soon as possible to ensure the information is accurate. Set the flow at a rate that is neither too fast nor too slow. Too fast means that the water might splash and introduce contamination not originally found in the water. Too slow simply means that the sample bottle and cap are exposed to potential contamination more than they need to be. Make sure that the flow is consistent and steady. Do not alter the flow once you've begun the process, as it might dislodge biofilm or scale in the line. When the bottle lid is removed, hold its threads down and do not touch the inside of the cap. Remember that the inside of the cap and bottle have been sterilized. Do not set the cap down or place it in a pocket. If the bottle lid becomes contaminated, it may contaminate the sample. Do not rinse out the bottle before collecting the sample, and do not touch any portion of the inside of the bottle. Although not required by regulations, wearing gloves during the sampling process is recommended. Now, collect the sample, leaving airspace as directed, according to the type of sample container used. If you make a mistake, discard the sample bottle and select a new one and start over. When finished, carefully replace the bottle lid, tighten, and place in the cooler on ice or ice packs and out of the sunlight. Keep sample bottles upright and avoid letting them become submerged in melted ice water. Recheck the information on the label and complete any unfinished forms that came with the sample bottle, including the chain of custody form. When transporting, keep the samples at less than 50 degrees Fahrenheit or below 10 degrees Celsius. Total coliform samples must reach the testing laboratory within 30 hours. Samples may be delivered to the lab or sent via overnight delivery. The samples must be analyzed within 30 hours of the sampling, regardless of when they are delivered. Any sample not processed within the required time frame will be rejected, so know the lab's schedule and whether they are closed on weekends and/or holidays. If a sample is rejected by the lab or lost during transport to the lab, recollect a replacement sample at the same sample location as soon as possible. If any routine sample is identified as total coliform positive, repeat sampling is required, as well as a check for the presence of E. coli. Repeat sampling must be done within 24 hours of learning of a total coliform positive result. At least 3 repeat samples must be collected and analyzed. Access to extra sample bottles is needed to allow this to occur. 1 repeat sample must be collected from the same tap as the original sample. Another must be collected within 5 service connections upstream, and the third from within 5 service connections downstream. Clearly label each sample. Repeat sampling does not confirm or deny the original positive coliform sample. It is designed as follow-up action to make sure that nothing more serious is happening at that location in the distribution system. The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency also requires public notification when a maximum contaminant level, or MCL, violation occurs. In situations of acute MCL violations, the public must be notified within 24 hours. If a monthly MCL violation occurs, the public must be notified as well. An acute MCL violation occurs when E. coli is detected in one of the 2 positive coliform samples from the original and repeat sampling. Phoenix, New York, located in northern central New York State, is home to about 2,200 residents, most of whom never gave their drinking water much thought until the utility received notice of positive coliform test samples from the distribution system.
There was a day where we actually had to call the principal and have him bag the drinking fountains because of a positive E. coli. It was not confirmed after that, but to be safe. So the awareness level in the community was quite high about water issues, and they wanted to make sure that the water quality is good.
They began an investigation to determine if the problem was from one of their 2 wells or was within their distribution system.
We cannot protect the public health if we cannot determine if the problem is really in the distribution system or in the well itself, or whether it's just sampling error. So it's very important to make sure that the sampling is done properly so that we can make a determination on risks.
The utility and local health officials examined the system operation, including the sample procedures and locations, and found problems. Poor sampling techniques, coupled with improperly maintained sampling sites, were cited as contributing factors to the problem.
The water may not be bad, but the instrument it comes out of could be dirty, and it'll give you a positive reading in a heartbeat. It leads to a lack of confidence in your system and in your operators.
Improving the testing sites and training samplers in correct testing fundamentals helped restore confidence in the monitoring data, thus restoring a strong sense of confidence in the community's water quality. Clean, safe water of consistent quality and supply is the goal of every water supplier. And while we cannot routinely test every drop of water produced for every possible contaminant, we can assess the overall integrity of the water system's multiple barriers using indicators. Even though effective water treatment procedures may be carefully practiced, it is still important to regularly check the final finished product within the distribution system. And the only way to accomplish that is through reliable and representative system sampling conducted, tested, and retested on an ongoing basis. Here are 3 points to always remember. First, trained sample collectors are very important to having a reliable monitoring program. Second, clean and maintained sample taps and very good techniques for collecting samples from faucets are as important as the sample collector. And third, being ready to respond effectively to positive coliform samples and to investigate causes for positives is essential to having confidence in and securing a water distribution system that is safe from contamination. An organized, efficient, and effective sampling program for total coliform is an integral part of a water supplier's toolkit in assuring the protection of the public health.